Welcome. Welcome to Knowlton. All right, this is a demonstration on how to load your quilt, right?
That's right.
And what?
I do not pin the quilt, so Miss Joyce is going to show me how to actually do that. I use red snappers.
And we're going to do that too.
We're going to do that too and teach you how to use those.
Yeah. So there's 3 ways that you can get your quilt onto the frame. One is with pins. One is where you would actually pin to the canvas. One is with zippers. So the zippers are attached to the canvas and you're pinning to the zipper. There's another way. Some people will actually staple their quilt to the zipper, so you could do that. And the third way is using a gripping system of some kind. We're going to demonstrate with red snappers here, but there's another system called leader grips that's basically the same. And with that, there's a dowel that's in the casing, and then there's some kind of a gripper that you push over that to hold it on. When I first started, when I got my first system in 2009, nobody ever asked me how I was going to get my quilt on the frame. And did I have a choice? Well, I wasn't smart enough to have a choice anyway at that point. But once I became a dealer, that was always a question that I asked my customers. Do you know or have a preference on how you want to get your quilt on the frame? And so I explain the methods and give them the choice of, what they want, because it makes a difference on ordering it. If you're going to be pinning to your canvases, sometimes, at least in years past, they didn't put a casing on here, they didn't put a hem on it, they didn't do anything on it, it was just a serged edge. If you want to use a leader grip system of some kind, you need to have a casing to slide that dowel into, to hold that dowel. And if you want zippers, the best time to get them is to order your leaders with the zippers, because they put them on here. It's not on the frame yet. The leaders aren't on the frame yet. So it's very easy for them to sew the leaders onto the zipper, or the zippers onto the leaders, while, before they actually are attached to the rollers. So good to know ahead of time what that is. So those are the 3 methods, and we're going to demonstrate 2 of those methods, pinning and the gripping system. And whether you're pinning directly to the leader or you're pinning to a zipper that's zipped onto the leader, that method is the same. So you want to talk about preparation of backing and...
Oh, you do that.
Okay. All right. So one of the things about long arm quilting, and it kind of becomes really important, your loading becomes really important if you're going to be doing paper pantographs or if you're going to be doing automation, because both of those assume that your quilt is loaded squarely on the frame. If your quilt top is like this, not square, but your pantograph is square with the frame, well, it's going to look like your pantograph is going downhill, uphill, or whichever way it is, instead of just nicely square across it. So loading is very important. And one of the things that I always tell people is that the outcome that you get, the look that you see at the very end of taking your quilt off the frame and getting your binding on it, and you go, wonderful. It's all result from a series of a lot of little things that you've done along the way. It's not just one thing. It's not just the quilting. It's not just that awesome piecing that you did, It's a combination of a lot of little things that start way back when you're cutting out those patches, piecing those blocks, and I always piece and then I trim and then I piece some more. I size everything so that everything is consistent, because a tiny little bit off here times 100 across can be a lot. It can be a lot of error. So it's the little things right from the very get-go of your quilting project to when you take it off the frame and put that binding on. So if you do a lot of little things right along the way, When you take it off, you're going to go like, I did a nice job. Okay? So this is part of the end result of a nice job. So there's some things in preparation in getting your quilt ready to go on the frame. And it starts with your backing. In fact, it actually starts before that. So let me talk for a second about washing your fabric. I wash everything, but I draw the line on jelly rolls. Okay, that's where I draw the line. I'll even wash fat quarters because the treatment that they put on these fabrics, there's sizing, there's processing that goes on, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And people go like, well, it's nicely pressed. Well, yeah, I know. But all of that can affect your stitching. It can affect your sewing on it, especially the wide backings that we have now. There's a lot of product that is on that, and they put it on there so that they can press it and get it folded and get it on the bolt, to get it. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but any wide backings that I've bought, the issue is when I go to square it up, I wash it, when I go to square it up, I may have an edge like this, and when I get it squared up, I may have trimmed off as much as 4 or 5 inches on each end. So when you buy wide backing, you better buy at least a half a yard, maybe a yard more, just to make sure you've got enough fabric so that when you square it up to get it on the frame, you've got enough. You don't want to be short. So washing your fabric is really important. So let me pass along a tip to you on how to wash it, because most people don't wash their fabric because it ravels and you end up with yards of, I just threw a piece in here, threads, out of there, and everything's all wound up and tied up, and you're like spending hours trying to cut things apart. I never have that problem. Years ago, I was teaching in some embroidery things, and there was an older lady in the class. I'm probably her age now, but anyway, there was a lady in there who had, years and years of experience, passed along a tip to us, and I've used it ever since with 100% success. When you wash your fabric, before you wash your fabric, you want to take your fabric and on all of the corners, cut off a triangle like this. Just take scissors and cut it off so that you have a bias corner, a bias right across here. All 4 corners of your piece of fabric. Toss it in the washing machine with a regular laundry soap that you're going to wash it with. When it's done, take it out and you'll notice like, oh, there aren't any ravels. Okay, put it in the dryer. I typically dry it under kind of lowish, medium-ish heat, for about 10 minutes. And I take it out, shake it out, lay it over clothes bars and let it air dry. If you let it dry in the dryer till it's dry, it's all wadded up like this, and then you spend a long time trying to press it, But if you take it out while it's just slightly damp and fold it like this, depending on how big it is, and put it over some clothes bars and let it air dry, it's pretty nice and flat. So all you got to do is take it to your ironing board, and in no time at all, you've got nice pieces of flat fabric. Okay, so my backing, all my fabric that I use for piecing is washed. And that helps to eliminate one of the issues that we have when we're quilting. And the major issue, like I said, is the sizing that they use, the processing, the treatments that they use on the fabric, because it can cause issues with what we think is tension. It looks like a tension issue. Now, just as an example, I had a quilt from one of my customers, and I ended up doing 2 quilts for her. She had twin granddaughters. She brought me the pink one first, and there was one fabric in that. She didn't pre-wash. One fabric in that consistently gave me something that looked like a tension issue. It was one fabric, so there was something about that fabric. Every time the needle went over it, looked like a tension issue. some kind of treatment on there that just was not responding in the same way as the rest of it. So then a while later, she brought me the blue one for the other twin. Same fabrics, different colorway. Same problem. The same fabric caused the same problem. So I knew it was a fabric problem. So pre-washing can pretty well eliminate things like that we run into. And we think, oh, there's something wrong with our machine. We adjust it. Get the same thing, get the same thing. No, it's a fabric issue. Okay, so preparing our quilt for going on the frame. So here's some of that, stuff. You won't get much of this if you do that little cut off the triangle thing. I've saved myself, I don't know how many hours of headaches with that technique. All right, before you go on the frame, before you put anything on the frame, you need to square up the backing, both the top and the bottom of the backing, because you want this to be loaded squarely on the frame. All right, so one of the things you're going to do is you're going to square this up. Now this is ripped. And I know there's places that we go in the country, especially to the Mennonite stores, they tear the fabric. Well, tearing will go along a grain line, but it doesn't necessarily square the fabric up. Now, I just finished reading a book written by Harriet Hargrave back in the 1990s. Very well known in the quilting industry, very, very knowledgeable on a lot of things. And this one was about how fabrics and batting and thread are actually made. So in the manufacturing process of it, one of the things that they're supposed to do, in the higher quality fabrics they do this better, is that they make sure that their fibers, and they have ways of testing this, their warp and their weft fibers are actually perpendicular to each other. But by the time they get from the manufacturing through all of the processing of the fabric, all of the things that it goes through and all of the loops and things and the washes and everything else, things can get skewed and distorted. So that if you tear along a grain line, it's not necessarily going to be square. So you do need to square your fabric in addition to doing that. Now, this piece is actually pretty good. But the way that you're going to look at it is you're going to hold your fabric up like this. You're going to bring the two sides of your backing together, and you're going to hold it up. And if you look at this, especially this side, see how that ripples? Okay? That is not ready to go on the frame. It needs to be shifted until you don't see any ripples there at all. That's got to hang straight. That fold's got to be straight along the bottom. Now when I do this, this isn't off by much. If this was a wide backing, I can guarantee I'd be off probably 4 inches doing this. Do not just simply line it up according to the end. Line it up by the fold and make sure there's no ripples in here, that it goes down and smoothly folds and comes back up. You do not need arms that are 3 yards long to do this, okay? You only need to do it in whatever reach you've got here, because it's going to be consistently off the whole way. So just in this arm length that I have here, I can line this up, and I can use my fingers here. I can get it back in between, and just move the sides, 2 sides like this, walk them along with my fingers until that hangs straight and there's no ripples there. At that point, I'm going to take it to my cutting table, and if I need to fold it over again, it needs a little bit more of a shift. If I need to fold it over again, I'm going to do the same thing. Fold it straight over and hold it up and make sure that I can shuck that along until it's just a nice fold without any ripples along it. And at that point, if I have enough folded over on my cutting table, then I'll put my ruler on it, line my ruler along my fold, and cut a nice square corner here. That's going to be exactly perpendicular to the rest of the fabric, the fold in the fabric. And you're going to do this on both ends of your backing, the top and the bottom. That prepares your backing for going on the frame. Now, preparing your top, we have a beautiful top right here. Isn't this lovely? Someone did a nice job of piecing this, don't you think? Okay. So with a top, am I unmiked? Okay. So with this beautiful top, there's a couple of things that you need to do as well. On the back side, you need to look around and find if there's any stray threads that are sticking around. It doesn't take long for a red thread on the back to poke through a white piece of fabric, and it looks, you've got these little red snakes underneath your, So check your backing, the back of your tops over. Trim all of those threads that didn't get trimmed the first time, and press that top. Press those seams open. Make sure they're open and they're flat, because if it's not, it's going to pucker it in, and you're not going to have a nice dimension on your quilt. So make sure you press it. When I am making my tops, everything gets pressed as I make it. Do you know how to press correctly? Let me show you. Let me tell you. Okay, so here's my top. Or we'll say that these are my patches. Have a seat. So I sewn these two pieces together. Here's my seam right here, my nice little 1/4 inch seam. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on my flat iron like this, or on my ironing board like this. I'm going to set the seam with my flat iron, and then I'm going to fold this side up, and with the edge of my iron, just nudge it and push. Nudge, push, nudge, push, nudge, push. And what that does is it opens that seam nice and flat. And when I press down on it, I have a nice open flat seam. You don't want seams that are like, curled over a little bit like that. You want them opened out nice and flat. So those are two things to do with your tops. Make sure all the threads are clipped and make sure it's pressed very nicely. Okay, at that point, you've done what you need to do to prepare to load your quilt. So, Veronica, let's load.
We'll learn.
Okay. So here is our backing. Now, remember to put your backing on with the wrong side up. Has anyone made the mistake of doing it the other way? Not yet. Not yet. We hope not ever, right? All right, so the first thing, and we have a center mark on our canvases, and this one does not. So when you get your frame, or the frame that you do have, there is a mark probably near the center of your canvas. Do not assume that that's the center of your system, okay? When they put these canvases on here, especially, and the zippers the same way, there's a mark on that. That was just the reference point to ballpark getting it in the center of the canvas, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the center of your frame, okay? My recommendation is, and when we set up stuff for our customers, I take my husband's metal rule, pull it out, we measure the length of the roller, not the frame, the roller, whatever number that is, divide by 2, and then we measure from the same end of the roller and mark on each canvas what that number is, so that this mark will align with that mark, okay? And that's our center. So I guess we're winging it on center here. All right, find the center of your backing. And I always have trouble with this because I try pinching a little
divot.
Yeah, and what happens is by the time I get it down here, it relaxes, and so put a pin in it. All right, when you're pinning to your canvases here, you're going to find the center, and so I'm just going to estimate here where the center is. Somewhere there, so we'll call this spot the center. All right, so let's say that this pin is the center of this canvas here. I'm going to pull this back like this, hold my canvas up like this, and I'm going to align the center of my backing piece right here with the center point on my canvas. And then on the canvas side of it, I'm just going to put a pin in about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And then I'm going to work my way from the center point out, and you will put more pins in than I will because I don't want to spend all day putting pins in here.
I have a question though.
Yes, ma'am.
So I heard that in order to make it pinned right, you have to go, so you're going from the center out, but is there a particular way you have to put your pin so you don't stab yourself at the end of it?
I always pin them one direction.
Okay.
Yeah. So if when you're pinning at home, you'll put pins in head to toe, but leave a space between them. They do not have to butt up to each other. They're just holding the backing on. You're not trying to glue it on here forever. And if you have too many pins in, what happens is it kind of buckles this up. Okay? So fewer is better. You just need to secure it to get it onto here. So I would probably have, 1 inch, maybe 2 inches between my pins, and that's enough to hold it. Okay? Now this is where I divert from what some people online do.
On the thing that she said, if you have that buckling and you're going to Longarm, you can see the ripples underneath there. So when you go to Longarm, you're going to essentially create like wrinkles in your quilt back that you can't get out unless you seam rip the back of your quilt. So that's why I wanted to explain that a little bit further.
And that's exactly right. The key here, I think that we're both saying, is we want this to be as flat as possible. And if you're putting in enough pins so that you see little puckers coming, that is not a good thing. That's just simply not a good thing. So the key when you're pinning is you want to pull the edge of the backing to the edge of the canvas, and then just pin it about 1/4 of an inch down. Okay, I've seen people pinning, doing all kinds of gymnastics, but this is the simple way. This is the easiest way. Edge to edge, and then pin. And these instructions are in my book, which is available out there.
And it also has maintenance and all the other fun stuff that you
Yeah.
So when you guys call me, I'm like, I don't know. I don't have Joyce's book on me right now, but wait till I get home, and then I go through her troubleshooting guide, and I usually like, okay, most likely this is what you have going on with what's going on.
And I didn't get smart all at once.
I call it the Longarm Bible because even if you don't have a Quilting Longarm, you could still use Joyce's books for the troubleshooting guides, because most likely that's the same issue with your Longarm.
All right, so once you're pinned, see how this folds back on itself? The pins are encased or on the inside of the canvas that rolls here, and this rolls back on itself with a nice little fold, and that really kind of secures it here when you're doing this. So that's pinning. Now, if we were pinning at the front, it would be the same idea. So let's put this top roller up. And by the way, a handy little thing for your pins, these magnetic base dishes here. I have several around. So this would be pinned to this one down here. So you can put that clip on it. And you're going to do the same thing. If we're pinning here, you're going to find the center and then hold the canvas up like this, right here, and pin edge to edge. Okay? And then you'll just start rolling it, and that will be secured like that. Now this leader has the
Red snappers.
the red, yeah, thank you. The red snapper, inside of there. With the gripper things that we're going to do here, the technique for this is a little bit different. If you think under, you're going to pull the back underneath that one so that you're working on top of that roller. And on the front one, you're going to pull it underneath as well. And again, you'll need to find the center. I bring it up like this and just fold it underneath the rod just a little bit. And with these systems, if you don't have them or are not familiar, they come with some little short ones that are temporary clips. And so you'll put, several temporary clips on, and then
to try and line it up.
Yeah, just to,
That's what she's saying.
Yeah, just to line it up. And so I look at the way that it drapes here when I do the front. I want to make sure that it's square. I want to make sure that it's draping the same amount. And I can actually adjust, if I see that like maybe one side of the backing a little bit longer or something, I can, pull it up just a little bit, adjust it. So you put the temporary ones on it to get started, and then you remove those and push these on over top of the rod. Because the other one was wider.
And it's going to stick out too.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So then you're going to drop this one down like this and then roll it. So the eventual goal is we want to have all of the backing down here, right? It's got to be on this front roller because as we advance the quilt, it's going to go that way. But we don't start out with that. Everything gets rolled onto the take-up roller first. And at first I thought, well, this is silly. This is a waste of time. Why am I doing this? So for a few quilts, I decided it's like an old wives' tale.
And I usually miss it too. If you have some of these lines and stuff in there,
Yes.
I'll miss it to get these sprinkles out of there.
Yep.
With a bottle too while I'm loading the quilt top, because a little bit of that moisture will take away those faint wrinkles or things like that. Things that you missed maybe on your ironing pass or
Exactly.
things like that.
Or it's been hanging on a hanger after you
You ironed it.
ironed it, yeah. So I do the same thing. I have a little mister. The best misters, if you have a hairdressing supply place,
Yes.
they have these misters, when you go get your hair done. Really fine mist. Those are the best ones, and they're not expensive. Psh, 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 over the top of it, and when you roll it, it's like pressing it.
Yeah, it is. And
Yep.
it'll get see this little bit of wrinkle up here at the top? It'll get those wrinkles out for you as well.
Yep. So the first thing after you've loaded, you got this loaded, you got that down there, you're going to roll everything up here. And typically if it's a long top or a long backing, I'll roll up as much as I can, and then I'll fasten that down there. And then you're going to transfer all of your backing from here onto the front roller. And gee, am I skinny enough to fit in there? Huh. I don't know what that is, but all right, we'll make it work. Oh, it's a good thing I went on a diet, huh? We're okay. All right. So this is what I call a controlled roll. I'm going to control how fast this is going to move from one side to the other. So I take this lock off back here. I leave the lock on here, and I'm holding on to this one so it just doesn't unroll on me. And I roll it from one side to the other. Now, as I do that, this is where I actually do the misting, is when I transfer it. So Veronica could come over here and mist it, and then I also smooth this out as I'm going along so that there's no little puckers, no little folds on my roller as I'm rolling it down here. And so it presses it really nice, keeps it really nice, and when I get done and take my quilt off the frame, real nice, real nice. It's nice and smooth on the back. Anything you want to add to that?
No, you're doing a great job.
Well, thanks. All right. So I would do it, 3 or 4 rolls, maybe 5 or 6, stop, go over, smooth it out each direction onto the roller there so it's nice and smooth. And then I roll it out to about something like that. So I have my top, is right here. My pins are showing here, or my leader grip would be showing here. And at that point, I'll put my lock back on here, and I'm ready to put my batting, lay my batting on.
So we always talk about the difference between batting, and you always want the dimples up and the flat side down. So can everybody see what we're talking about as far as dimples up and flat side down? So this is the difference between that.
Or the other thing to look for is what's called a scrim. A scrim is like a very fine, if you've ever used interfacing for like regular sewing, it's like an interfacing, but it's a very thin one. And when they do the needle punching and making the batting fibers are actually needle punched into the scrim. The scrim, when you see it, might be a little shiny, have a little shinier side. The scrim needs to be on the bottom of your batting. So look at it carefully to see if there's a scrim. Sometimes you can go to the corner of the batting and kind of peel, and if you get this little thin layer or something, that's the scrim. Put that on the bottom. Sometimes it's hard to tell, the dimples from the pimples. And but if you see the scrim, put that on the bottom. That's the place for for that. So one of the other things that we didn't mention is your batting and your backing need to be wider than the quilt top. You need to have I would say about 5 inches on each side. I always cut my batting, cut my backing and make sure my batting are both sticking out about 5 inches on each side. You're going like, well, that's a lot of waste. Well, the bottom line is when we have this set up to quilt, we're going to put clips on here. They need to be able to hold on to the backing. And when you're moving around, whether it's hand guided or whether it's with automation, those clips need to be out far enough so that the throat of your machine doesn't accidentally hit them. When you hit those things with automation or by hand guiding or when you're doing ruler work, your machine just kind of goes off to somewhere you don't want it to go, and you end up taking out some stitches of some kind. Yep, so what we have here, clips, there'll be probably 2 of them that come with a wider frame like this or a longer throat. And the clips are going to fasten on to just the backing. Do not fasten clips onto the batting, and do not put them on your top. The purpose of the clips are to stabilize the sides of the quilt, not to stretch it out. Okay, so when they're on here, and this is in the down position, I'll put this back here. You want it to just stabilize the side. Do not distort the backing. If you pull that backing out like this and you quilt on it, as soon as you take those clips off, it's going to shrink into what its normal size will be, plus the extra for being drawn in with fabric draw. So stabilize the back of the quilt, don't stretch it. So these go on after everything is on, but those are clips, and make sure that you have enough batting and backing to fasten those clips to, so that the throat of the machine isn't going to hit those when you're quilting. So we've laid our batting down, and put this down for now. Ow. That's all right, I'm expendable. That's what my husband says. I'm expendable. Yep. So we're going to baste the batting down. And we're going to use a long stitch. So on our stitches here, there's a basting option here. Whether you have a Pro or whatever machine you have, there is a basting function on it. And I'll show what this is with a new series. If you have a Pro or something else, I can tell you what that is as well. So I usually do my basting at 2 stitches per inch, so that's about a 1/2 inch stitch. It's enough to hold the batting there. And the purpose of this basting line, and we're going to use the what is it? I forgot.
What are we using?
This thing right here, my channel lock. Yeah, my channel lock. I'm going to do it with the channel lock on, because I want this basting line to be perfectly parallel to the rollers on my frame. Because remember, one of the keys here is to make sure my quilt is square, parallel to the rollers, and square with the frame. So put this up here, put my channel lock on, pull up my thread. Do you all know how to floss? No, not your teeth. Okay, flossing is a technique for quickly pulling my bobbin thread to the top. Yeah. Okay, so flossing, I'll stand out of the way here. I'm going to take a stitch, and then I'm going to hold this like I would floss my teeth, with a space between my fingers. I'm going to slide it underneath the foot, and right there is that beautiful pink bobbin thread. And I have both of the threads in my hand. Okay, that's flossing.
True. I didn't know that this morning. Sorry, ladies.
So then I'm going to take a couple stitches and turn my machine on. Now, wow, that's not holding it very well.
I'll have to adjust it.
Okay, so this channel lock needs some adjustment because it's sliding.
It's a brand new machine.
It hasn't been adjusted yet. Well, it'll go on a different frame than this one when I deliver it. But anyway, so with the channel lock on, and when you're basting, you want to move your machine right along at a good pace. If you start to hesitate, because this is a stitch regulated basting stitch, if you start to hesitate, the machine thinks, oh, I'm quitting. And then you get kind of a hiccup, you know, doesn't want to go back. So, did that do it straight? Because it's not holding it in at all. Oh, that was bringing the bobbin thread to the top. Do any of you? He was in my class this morning. Do any of you reach underneath to clip your bobbin thread?
I do. I didn't know this until your husband told me earlier today.
We've got 2 converts today. How to bring the bobbin thread to the top.
At the end. Yeah. At the end, she did an extra stitch and pulled it up, and then you can clip it on the top.
Yeah.
The one thing is that in the book?
So
Is it in the book?
one tip takeaway from this is to make sure that your channel lock actually is doing something. This one is not. So my basting line isn't perfect. Yeah, oh well. All right. So the purpose of the basting line, isn't it nice to have a mechanic right available? Yeah.
Lana, you'll be able to do that.
Joyce, is it in your book how to bring up the bobbin thread? Okay.
Yes. Yep. So,
We went over it.
Yep. I know.
yep. So there's two purposes of this basting line. One is to hold the batting down, you know, and the second one is to create a nice straight line as a placement line to put our top against, so that we can place the top and make sure that the top of our quilt top, is parallel to the roller. So we have this lovely quilt top here, which is,
You did a beautiful job on it.
thank you, which is actually wider than
The backing.
the backing.
It's okay.
Yeah, normally not the case. And by the way, this top roller doesn't exist in my studio.
It doesn't in mine either.
So, you know, the roller is here because, you know, you can roll your top up onto it. You can fuss over getting center to center and rolling it up and all of that, but we don't.
No, we don't, because then you can manipulate the quilt. But
So-
it is nice if you do want to manipulate the batting too. So.
Yeah, so we do what's called floating. And floating, this roller was on my frame for one quilt when I first got it. And when I did the advancing, I had to undo the clip on the top roller, undo the clip on down here so that I could advance a quilt. And I'm going like, well, this is really fussy. This takes a lot of time. Not doing this, you know? And we took the roller off. It's been off ever since. That was 15 years ago.
Same way.
Okay, so when we get our top and we're putting our top on, we're again going to find the center of our top, and we're going to align the center of our top with the center of our roller.
Do you have questions? Do anybody have any questions that you can try and answer while we're doing this? Do you have questions? What's your question?
So is the batting gonna hang down too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The batting would be hanging down anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so my method for controlling that, and so here's a good, see how shiny here, this is like got this shiny little thing compared with this side here. That shininess is the scrim that's in there, and on some battings it's much more prominent than others. Some you have to kind of look for it. One place to look is on the packaging that it comes with. If there's a scrim, it should say on the package that there is a scrim. Now, Quilter's Dream batting doesn't, for I think almost all of them, they do not use a scrim. So look at the, you know, the packaging that comes with it to see if there is a scrim. If it does say that there's a scrim, look for it so that you can make sure that that's on the bottom. So center to center again, you're going to line up the center of your quilt with the center up there and lay it out like that. And typically, you know, our top would be, you know, something like this, with batting and backing sticking out the sides about 5 inches on each side. Batting is kind of tacky. I don't mean that kind of tacky. You can lay a fabric on it, you can lay your top on it. It probably won't shift very far because there's just enough tackiness to it. But I usually do pin. I'll put a pin maybe in the center. And my reason for pinning is I want to keep the top of the quilt along my basting line so that I can keep it nice and square. So I may put in a few pins along here. Make sure when you put your pins in that they're far enough away from where you're going to stitch so that you don't run into the pins. And once you get a few pins in that, then you're ready to baste your top to your backing. Now, sometimes I get questions on this about, can I use my channel lock, put my channel lock on and baste? The answer is yes. If you've watched any of, her name just went through my head. She does a lot of ruler work, does a lot of videos.
Angela Walters.
No, not Angela. Anyway, the way she puts her top on is she just lays it on, puts a channel lock on, and lines.
Natalie Vaughn.
Natalie, yes, and keeps adjusting her top along with the channel lock on. So that's one way of doing it. I don't think she actually bastes her batting down. I think she just lays it down and lays her top down and then puts her channel lock on and yep, and stitches it down. And it works. It's a way to do it, and it does work. And you can do the same thing by putting the other channel lock on and going down the side and just shifting the side once you've locked in and know what dimension you want.
Especially if you're going to do a pantograph or something like that, you want to make sure that you are basting those side edges down so you don't get something caught up or something like that. I always baste my quilt top because you don't know. You're supposed to measure it, but you know there's always the inevitable that happens, and it could go off of that, and then you don't want to catch that quilt top and tear a hole in it. So.
Right. Yep. So basting the top to the backing and batting should be everybody's procedure all the time, not just when you're doing a pantograph, because what it does is it stabilizes the width of that quilt. You know, you've marked it out, you've measured, you made sure that the quilt top stays the same size all the way from top to bottom. I use a 0 center tape for that with a 0 point aligned with the same center mark here, and adjust my top every single time so that I make sure that as I'm going down the quilt, I tell my quilt how big it's going to be.
And your quilt clips are going to do this job if you're doing the right job.
Yep, so that top stays nice and square. Basting is important, and as Veronica mentioned, especially if you're doing pantographs and you're stitching off the edge of your quilt top, that machine is going back and forth and back and forth. It's, you know, if you're doing paper, you're standing back there watching your pattern. You're not watching the edge of your quilt, you know, if it catches. And with automation, that's moving along kind of fast. By the time you see something happening, you can't hardly react fast enough, you know, and it travels quite a ways before you can turn it off and something disastrous can happen. So basting your top onto your batting and backing, I use 5 or 6 stitches to the inch. So with the new machines here, our basting, the highest number that you can have here is 5 stitches to the inch, which is what I use. And the reason that I don't use like a regular sewing stitch with it, like 12 stitches to the inch, is I want my top to have a little bit of wiggle room, you know. You're getting it set up, give it a little wiggle room there, because when you start tacking it down with sewing, you know, it's going to be firmly attached. So it needs a little bit of breathing room and wiggle room while it's loaded. And the 5 stitches to the inch gives it enough to hold it down, but it's not a big enough stitch that your hopping foot's going to get caught underneath the stitch or underneath the edge of your quilt.
How close do you do it to the edge of your top?
It should be done within the 1/4 of an inch that you're going to put your binding on. And if you keep it there, you don't have to.
I even do mine sometimes a little further out too.
You can. So there's a couple of ways to do it. One is you can do it with a straight stitch. Some people do it with a little serpentine stitch like that, zigzaggy back and forth. But I like to keep it within a 1/4 of an inch. Then I don't have to go back and take out anything. You know, I can just sew my binding on, flip it, and sew it.
She's going to do a cool binding on the quilt frame class for us later this week. So.
Yep, technique done at the frame so that it is ready to flip to the back and hand sew. And if you have a business doing long arm quilting, it's a good money maker. Yeah. So yes, lining it up, stitching. Now when I base this down, I typically start in the middle stitch to one corner and down as far as I have the
Yeah.
space for. Then I go back to the middle, stitch to the other side and down, and do that side so that I secure it
Did you
that
stitch
way.
the whole quilt or just as long,
Just,
the 24 inches
just
or
the,
whatever your
yeah,
frill
just
is?
the amount that I have in here.
Yeah, usually like 16 inches on the side and then whatever it is on your top.
Yep.
So I do like what she says. So I do from the middle over down, and then I break thread, and then I start at the top again and go break and go down. So
Yep. And then every time we advance, we baste again. Now, one little trick on basting it when you are advancing your quilt, there's a tendency for quilts to kind of, the sides might be a little bit longer, and it kind of partly goes back to technique when you're constructing your quilt tops. One of the keys to avoid dog ears on your borders is to measure the quilt
lengthwise.
horizontally. Well, start with horizontal, your top and bottom. Measure the quilt and cut two borders the same length. You're going to go like, well, it might not fit on the other side. I don't care. The best way to square up your quilt is to have top and bottom border the same dimension, and you do the same thing on the side borders. Measure it, cut two of them that are the same, and put them on. So if it isn't exactly the same on both sides, you pin it on here, put a pin in the middle, and if you might have a little bit of extra, either top or border, you do the ends, balance it out in the middle, go to the middle of that, then the middle of those, pin it, and the one that is the fullest one you're going to put on the bottom. And as you sew it, your feed dogs are going to go like this, and it will ease it in, and I can guarantee you will not have puckers, and you will not have pleats. Those of you, anybody done garment sewing in here? Okay, so when you do a sleeve, one part of your sleeve is much bigger dimension than the inner part that it sews to. This outer part is bigger. How do you do it? You put the bigger, fuller part on the bottom, and you let your mechanical feed dogs pull that through. If you try to do it the other way, you're going to get pucker, 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 pucker all the way around. Okay, same concept here. You put the fuller part on the bottom, and the feed dogs will pull it through evenly and not leave any puckers or pleats. So use physics, I guess it would be, or whatever you want to call it, to your advantage.
Gravity.
Yeah, use it to your advantage to finish your quilt and make the borders square up your quilt for you, and then you won't end up with that problem. But still, the best way when you're advancing your quilt and basting your sides, start at the bottom and stitch up. And if you see any fullness, use your fingers like this, like feed dogs, and just pull it like this, your little feed dog fingers, and pull the little fullness down through, down through, down through, so that by the time you get to where your stitching meets up. Go ahead.
Can I put this down?
Yeah,
I
it's
don't want to put my
easier
arms-
than working over the
I
top.
don't want to put my arms between it.
Yeah, crash it down, I'm caught. Yeah, so use your fingers like feed dogs when there's any fullness to even that out as you're stitching.
Scissors. I didn't bring scissors.
Oh,
Man. Thank you.
maybe you want those. Do you want these?
Where's her little clip with the scissors on your string? I wear mine.
Yeah. So Veronica is stitching down the top like we do it. Do you have questions?
Tape measure,
Yes.
and then you on your machine. I put one on ours too. Where is yours located?
The zero center tape I place right behind this front roller, because when I put my top on, I measure my top, I find the center of it, and then I measure out to each corner on my top and make sure that that's the same dimension. So then I use that dimension, whatever it is. So if it's a 40-inch quilt, 20 inches both sides, my zero center tape is lined up with the middle of my quilt. So every time I advance it, I put my edges of my quilt at 20. So that may mean I need to shuck it one way or the other, because you know you have a machine that's kind of walking along here, and it has a tendency to, you know, move your top a little, you know, one direction or another. So by readjusting that every time, you know, typically what would happen if you didn't readjust is your quilt would kind of walk its way to the bottom right, and you'd end up with a dog ear. Even if you'd done your quilting, you know, your borders correctly, you'd end up with a little bit of that. You typically have to pull it back to the left every time you advance it to get it straightened up again.
Did you like the tape with Velcro?
Yeah, in my online store, I sell it with Velcro patches. They stick on here, and I give instructions on how to do it. So I place it right behind this front roller here, and it attaches right here.
How do you see it if it's behind that?
I don't have this roller on.
You just see the edges.
That's on top.
No.
It lays on top.
It lays on top of
lays
your-
on
this
top.
It lays on top. On the
On top of your top.
Before
Yep.
the canvas.
On top of the
So you
bar.
take it off and on with the roller.
No, you just put it underneath.
So, yeah, so the zero center tape, lays on top of your quilt.
Yeah.
And I have Velcro patches on mine so that when I'm loading, I just undo one end of it and, yeah, move it away. Yep,
I have Velcro at the end of mine. Like, I Velcroed all of this.
yep.
So you just have the ends Velcroed and you just lay it across? It's not
Yes.
actually, okay.
Yes, so there's a patch, it's the Velcro patches, so one sticks to the end of the frame, the other patch is on the back of the tape.
Okay.
That's the way I have it. Yep,
I did mine a little different, so I'm going to change it.
yep. Other questions on loading? Anybody learn something new?
I have a question on we were talking about fabric.
Yes.
Washing your fabric. What, do you wash minkies and cuddles?
I wash all fleece and flannel.
Definitely. Yeah,
Flannel
especially
shrinks
flannel.
like 5 inches. It's crazy.
Oh yeah,
Oh my goodness.
oh yeah.
then
And
what
it
about
shrinks
cuddle and
and it shrinks way more than the batting.
That's
So
polyester on the back.
Yeah.
I've never had anything with my
I've
Minky,
never washed
and
a
I use
Minky
Minky a lot.
yeah, I personally haven't made anything using Minky, but I've quilted quilts for people that bring me Minky. And so when you're loading Minky, you have to be careful about the stretch because it has more stretch one direction than the other. What do you do?
I load it with the salvage edge in the center, and then you stretch this way. Feel out the Minky, but most of the time, even with flannel and fleece, you're gonna have sizing in that, and you're gonna feel which way it actually stretches. Try and put that this way in between the bars, not this way. Because
So
if you do
stretch
it this way,
not-
you do it this way, you're fighting with it with your clamps on
Okay.
the sides.
But aren't you fighting with it on your roller?
No.
Otherwise?
Because
I do
it's
the
it's
opposite.
it's kind of floating, so you can use your rollers as kind of your way to not stretch it too much, if that makes sense. It takes the stretch a little bit out of it, but it's not.
So you actually pin to the stretch.
Yeah.
It's the same pinning work, because I have zippers. So
Right.
you would, it's the same
Yes.
difference, isn't it?
Yep, so
Yes.
So what
pinning,
I'm finding is from the get-go, and again, you just develop bad habits, I guess. I'm rolling the bottom one opposite of what you guys do. I roll this way.
Yeah, but it
instead
helps
of
take
this
it.
way.
It helps take it out, like we were talking about when you spray the backing. It helps take those wrinkles out if you do the way that Joyce talked about. If you actually roll it up to the top bar and then roll it back down.
Right,
to
but
the
I'm
bottom
saying
bar.
on the bottom bar, I
And that's what this is. This is rolled this way.
rolled this way, but I
Right,
roll
because,
that way.
no, you
If
can't.
you roll it that way, then then
Your
the angle of your sewing machine is not going to be correct.
Yep,
Oh, you just adjust that with the little height thing.
no, no.
That's what I've been doing. That's all I can say.
Okay.
It's only been 7 years.
We're
Come on.
Here you go, Fran. We're going to work with you on
Why
that.
I'm here.
All right, so what Veronica is saying is true. You've got to keep the surface here level. So it comes off the bottom of the take-up roller and goes across the top of the front roller and rolls under like that. So bottom back there, across the top and underneath here.
Because it's going to be at an angle like this.
Yeah.
It's not though, so maybe I do it that
You
way. and I
might
just
be
feel like-
okay. Yep. So the other thing here is that thought just left my head. Oh gosh, what was it? Oh, I know what it was. One of the things that's important is we have on the commercial frames these handles here. This is called the quilt elevator. When you have loaded your quilt, when you first loaded your quilt, you want to make sure that this roller is either up or down, whatever it needs to be, so that you can easily slip your fingers between the roller and the machine throat right here.
I like mine at 2.5 inches.
And as your quilt gets bigger and bigger, you've got to remember to, again, every time you advance your quilt, stick your fingers under here and check it and adjust these handles at the end of the frame so that you can always stick your fingers under there. My husband, who just showed up here, has a story about me. I'd set up a frame and because someone was going to come and look at it and I was testing it out and I had some fabric on it so they could try the machine and I'm playing with it and I'm quilting along, playing with it and I get to one spot and the machine like bound up on me. It wouldn't move. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did we do wrong? Does something binding? So I went out to the shop and I got him and I said, this is not working right. He came in, took one look at it. Does that help? Well, yes, it does. I forgot about the quilt elevator. So there's a little scale on here. Once you get one end of it, do the same thing on the other end. Make sure that your quilting surface is flat, that this isn't dragging and keeping you from sewing.
You don't want to have it too tight either between the bars. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a lot of, wives' tales out there about how tight this needs to be. You do not want it drum tight. Do not crank that because I already talked about having your backing on and distorting it with, pulling on it with the clamp too tight there. The same is true. You can distort it by having your rollers too tight. It needs to be, kind of bouncy like this. And if you're able to stick your finger up and grab a hold of your quilt like this with your finger underneath it, that's about right. That's about the
You
right.
should be able to look through and be able to see your finger underneath your bottom backing.
Yep. If you can't do that, it's too tight. And if you could stick your whole fist up there, and grab it, that's probably too loose. Okay? So there needs to be a little bit of flexy floaty in here, and the reason for that is you have a needle that's going to be going up and down. And if you have that drum tight and that needle is going down in a hole, your machine is moving along while it's making a stitch. It's not stopping with every single stitch. So your machine is moving while your needle is in there. Your needle is going to be flexing. So the tighter that is, there's less wiggle room, for that needle to go up and down. And you get better stitching if there's a little bit of, breathing room for your quilt in there rather than having it too tight.
So neither of you have that top roller on there?
Yeah.
Mine is, I have 2 frames, and one, after we took it off, we put shrink wrap back on it again, or stretch wrap, and it's resting on the floor upstairs in my house. And the other one is never came out of the shrink. It's
Mine's in the basement, and with my light bar.
Yep. So over the years, I've sold over 100 machines, and I have, of those customers, 2 that have the top roller on.
And they use it?
Yes, they both do.
For what?
Well,
Your
one of
quilt
them,
top is supposed to actually roll up on this, but if
The
you work,
top.
I like to work on vintage quilts. Most of those are very uneven, so you're not able to take in
the distortion, the
yeah, the
tightness,
distortion. You're not able to
Yeah.
like take and move it if you're.
Yep, so this would be rolled up on this. And one of my customers does a lot of quilting for people. In 5 years, she quilted 1,000 quilts on the machine. And just to tell you how good the knolting machines are, in those 5 years, this was after 5 years at this point, she called me one day and she said, "This isn't stitching quite as good as it did." Okay, so I said, "Well, you know, I know you quilt a lot." You know, she's in the same club I am. And I said, "Well, maybe we need to think about maybe the tension, the spring getting kind of worn out and all." So we replaced the tension assembly, and that helped a little bit, but it wasn't to her standard. So she took a picture. I said, "Take a picture for me of the hook assembly." So she sent me the picture of the hook assembly, and I'm going like, "Oh my gosh, Marilee, you nearly wore that hook point like right off." So we went and changed the hook on it and retimed it for her back to what it was. So in those 5 years and 1,000 quilts that she ran through it, it was an Envy model. She's now upgraded to the Diamond, but it keeps track of the number of stitches. She put over 1 billion stitches through that machine, and that's all that we did to it.
Wow.
Okay, that's all we did.
The hook assembly is this piece down here.
Yep,
Just in
where the
case.
bobbin goes.
Where the bobbin goes. Oh, we'll turn the light on. We got fancy lighting on this one. Here's a bobbin light. Okay, so the hook assembly is down here, and here's like the actual.
Yep, it's the place that the bobbin goes in. Yeah, so that's the quality. That's the quality of these machines. Are incredible. And so now she's got a Diamond that she's doing the same thing through, putting quilt after quilt after quilt after quilt through it. And she loves her new Diamond. So yeah.
I got a question.
Yes.
Do you ever have to change the leaders that they stretch or anything?
Okay, so on the older frames, many of them came with canvases that did not have a hem in them. And they were just serged. And sometimes those have stretched out. You can replace the canvases on them. It's not hard to do. We can give you instructions on how to do that. They can be replaced. But typically the ones now that have a hem in it, or this casing, because it's folded over, they don't stretch out like the other ones did.
Another thing is if you're putting zippers on your leaders or your canvas leaders, they can sew a tab on there so it's easier to pin to too. As well, you can just ask for that. They can do that for you, or sew an additional holder. So I say you wanted to use your zippers and your red snapper system, you can absolutely do that as well.
Yep, it's called a leader tab. It's about this wide, and one side has a zipper on it to zip onto the zipper that's on your current leaders, and the other side has a casing that you can put your leader grip or your red snapper into.
Do you
The
have
del-
those in the store
$250, and then for those
for the leaders?
for new leaders, if you'd like to do leaders.
That's for.
Just for the
or all
snappers
three?
though, I already have zippers. I already have the zipper on.
So the leader tab,
The tab.
They
yeah,
would have to know which zippers you have, so you would have to take a picture of the ends of yours, and then that would be something you could call up and order. I don't know the
Okay.
pricing, but I will absolutely ask for you.
yeah.
Ron?
Did you talk about flossing?
Yes, we did
did.
floss.
And
extra set of leaders that you got zipper, so that you can take it off and do another quilt, put it back
Right.
on?
Yep, so if you have,
Or if you make a mistake, you can unzip it, get out, sit down on your couch, and start working it out instead of leaning over the machine.
Yeah.
yes, he always knew if I came with a quilt in my hand that I'd unzipped and a seam ripper in my other hand. Don't ask any questions.
Well, and I always say you can always order an extra set of zippers or with the tabs on them. If you do a lot of charity quilts or something like that, have the charity go ahead and buy it, and then they're able to go ahead and you're not spending your time sitting there pinning it for them, so it saves your time and their time. So.
Other questions on this? Yes.
Well, I have a question about the fabric for the back. Actually, two questions. So I own a quilt shop, and some customers want it ripped, some customers want it cut. You talked about the issues, but would you rather have it ripped along the grain first and then straighten it, or should I just cut it because you're going to be cutting it anyways?
So one of the misnomers about straightening is you can on smaller scale maybe straighten a piece, but if you're talking about 3 yards,
Right.
it's probably not going to work. And Harriet Hargrave in her book did address that issue. I think it's, whatever your customer wants, if they want it ripped. But see, then that leaves you potentially with something that's not straight left that you might have to trim off and waste for the next customer that you're cutting.
Yeah.
So, that's a business decision for you to make. Am I going to rip everybody's fabric, or am I going to just cut everybody's fabric?
Yeah.
And some, if
Because
you've
I
got
told them
printed
they need
fabric,
to
you don't wanna rip it because especially if it's got a pattern, then you're not gonna follow your pattern because they don't always stamp it on there, right?
Right. Some of it, and a lot of it depends on where the fabric is made and the quality of the printing, and there's so many factors that go into that. But the thing to remember is tearing will tear along the grain line. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be square because the fabric gets distorted along the way in the process. So.
Well, then my other question relating to the backing fabric is, some of the companies have gone to, like Moda, for example. Almost all of their backings now are 200 thread count, and they have a silky feel too.
Yep, I have one on the
Yeah.
back of that quilt right now.
And so my Moda rep says that the customers love it.
The customers love it. It looks beautiful quilted. I would cut it instead of rip it.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it actually warps those, it warps those fibers right at the ends, about 4 inches into that fabric
when they rip it.
when they rip it.
Yeah. So one of the things about the higher thread count like that is that it can be a little bit more challenging to stitch because you've got that higher thread count. It's like sewing on batik fabric, which is a very high thread count, plus all of the stuff that they do to do the batik process, makes it challenging to quilt.
Are you guys
So,
Are you gonna talk about needles in the boutiques?
we should talk about needles.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
what's a normal fabric thread count?
Probably
Or like a good,
maybe 100.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, how do you know?
How do you know that? Well, that's kind of a standard, I would say. But you can cut, the best way to do it is to cut about 2 inches by 2-inch square, measured out, and then mark on it where 1 inch would be. So you have a 1-inch square, and then just start pulling fibers off, both on 2 sides, and then literally count how many there are in your 1 inch in each direction, the warp and the weft of that, and you'll get a thread count. Sometimes there are more in one direction than the other based on how the fabric is made. But that's how you figure out how many there are. Yeah.
Most of the fabric companies are consistent, so Moda is 60 by 60 threads. And on, you know, all the 45-inch fabrics.
So they don't say it on both.
No, they don't.
Not typically, not typically.
They'll also do their solid, their metal solid backings that way, but then they'll sew back into the other one. And the interesting thing about using that 200 thread count for the back, when you trim off your extras after it's all quilted, you can bind it with the extras if you're doing it by machine. If you're doing it by hand, it's gonna be harder. But you don't wanna use those scraps in a future project on the front because it's gonna have a shinier look than everything else.
Okay.
But Art Gallery Fabrics is also doing the shiny silky as well too now. Yeah.
So one of the other things to think about too on something like that is how is it going to wash? You know, that higher thread count is going to wash differently than, you know, a regular thread count. You know, I would probably do some experimentation on some things like that and see what the shrinkage is going to be. And, you know, if one is excessively more than the other, then that's going to affect your quilt after it's quilted. You know, even if you pre-wash, you know, it could be different. Yeah, so let's talk about needles for a second.
After you load your quilt top, every quilt you should change your needle. There's a magnetic thing to change your needles out. And then also it depends on what kind of fabric you're using. So say you're using a boutique fabric on the back and you have a boutique fabric on the top, you're going to want a different kind of needle. So I'll let you, she knows more about this.
Yep, so the needles, your machine was timed, if it's a L hook, it was timed with a size 20 needle. And if it's an M hook, it was timed with a size 19 needle. And I typically stick with those. People go like, I don't like the needle holes. Get over it. After it's washed one time, you know, they go away. If you don't like it, spritz it with water. They'll go away, you know. The reason for the larger needle as opposed to maybe a 14 or a 16 that you might want to use is it's stronger, it's sturdier, it's not going to flex as much. And if you go down too far in the sizes, you can go down typically one size and still be okay. But if you go down, you know, 2 sizes or 3 sizes, that positions the needle, the scarf of the needle, farther away from the hook. So instead of the hook passing right here close to the needle, it's out here, and it may or may not pick up the loop of the thread, the top thread. And if it misses it, then you'll see like skip stitches, you know, and you're going like, oh, there's something wrong. Well, there is something wrong because these are not close enough so that it stitches properly. There's also what we call a ballpoint needle. Ballpoint needles are very useful anytime you run into intermittent stitch quality issues that look like it might be timing, or not timing, tension. And the ballpoint needle has like a shallow rounded point on it, but different than the sharp needle that is like this. And this rounded point like this, and in garment sewing we use a ballpoint needle for knit fabrics. In this particular case, what this ballpoint does is it makes the hole bigger sooner to carry the thread down so that that thread loop can be left below and be picked up by the hook. So anytime I begin to see any issue with thread quality or stitch quality, I switch right away to a ballpoint needle. I always use it with batik because that will be a problem from the get-go. And whether you have batik on the top or the bottom or both, the ballpoint needle should be your go-to first option.
And t-shirt quilts.
And the same with t-shirt quilts, yes.
Just saying.
Yes.
Ballpoint needle?
Yep, because it's hard to get, you've got a back interfacing on there, you've got the top, which is a knit material to start with, and then you've got your batting, your backing, so you're going through more stuff. And so you need to get that hole started so that the thread can go down through and be picked up.
And you have thicker seams too on each.
Yes, you got thicker seams all the way too, Ron.
When you use a smaller needle, you have those different layers you're going through. You've got a smaller hole for the thread to go through. It can change your tension, especially if you go over places where you fold it over when you've made your top. And so the bigger that hole you can keep, the less friction there is, and it won't change your tension in your stitching. It'll also
If you do an English paper piece, use a ballpoint needle because you've got a lot of seams there that you're going over.
Yeah, for little distances too. It's a little bit here, it's a little bit there, and
Yeah.
pretty soon you see stitching not so good here, you know, different places. So, yeah, needle choice is very, very important. And I always opt for the bigger needle as opposed to the smaller needle. The bigger needle also has a deeper groove in it to carry that thread. So that's important. You got to keep the thread in the groove of the needle. If it's not in there good, you know, it's not going to be carried down below the quilt sandwich.
And she said something about the little magnet.
Yes.
That dumb thing is so, it's instrumental
Yep.
in getting your
Yep.
needle in straight.
It's a little magnet about this long, it's round, and what you do when you're changing your needle, or putting your needle in, remember to have the groove facing you at the front. So the way I remember that is I always stick my thumbnail. If I can stick my thumbnail in that groove, I know that I've got it in right. I can't tell you how many calls I've had that I've done video conferencing with. Or I had a woman drive 2.5 hours bringing her machine to me, and I took one look at it and I said, your needle is in backwards. And because of that, and even on the phone, this was before we had much video stuff going on with our phones, I said, is your needle in right? And she said, oh yes, I looked at your book. Well, she didn't look good enough. And when it didn't work right, her husband retimed the machine because it was hitting, you know,
That's
wrong.
not a fun process.
Yeah. So we got to turn the needle around and retime the machine, and she took it home, you know, and then it was okay. So always stick your thumbnail in the, you know, the front of it. If it goes in, your needle is right. And then you can, before you do your tightening on that screw, you just rest that magnet right on the needle, and you can see whether it's cocked or whether it's sticking straight out at you. Adjust your needle and tighten your screw, and always tighten your screw with a screwdriver. Never ever finger tight, because it will come out. It will come out. Because just the machine running, it's running so fast, and a little vibration that's there, your finger tight, it'll loosen up, and I can guarantee it'll come out. And it won't be pretty.
Have you ever used the thumb screw that has got the screw slot in the back so you can at least grab hold of it better? To kind of tighten it down by hand to get the needles to stay?
Yeah, so these don't have the little ribs on them, but I do, you know, I tighten it a little bit with my fingers enough to hold the needle in there. Also remember that you have a sight hole on the side of your needle bar right here. Make sure that the needle is all the way up in there, and you see needle in there and not daylight on the other side. Because if that needle isn't all the way up in there, when that hook is rotating, it's going to nip the point of that needle right off. Just like that.
Guess who did it with a brand new diamond?
Yes, ma'am.